In Mudbox 2009, we have a host of new interactive rendering features that provide artists with a working environment that closely mimics their target platform, whether it's games, film, or television. So in this case here, we have a character here, and I can go ahead and actually apply a whole new CG effects shader material to this creature. We've added support for CG effects based materials. In this case, I'm just going to go in and throw on a toon shading effect onto this here as well. So if we just go take a look at what we end up with here, we get this nice kind of toon shading effect. Giving support for CG effects shaders will enable artists to develop their assets while viewing them as they would appear in their game's console or when rendered. And of course, I can take any of these material settings that I'm working with and I could put them into my material presets folder here. This material presets folder stores information related directly to the material as well as render preset, including lighting information. And HDR image information as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and assign an existing material here. So I've got my base material I'm working with here that has my texture layers on there. So if we just jump into our paint, let's just go ahead and just turn those off on here, and I'm just going to jump into my object list, take a look at our default material, and just see what we have for shadows. Yeah, we have shadows turned on in there. And I'm just going to jump into my lighting here and turn on the ability to cast shadows on there. So I can change the resolution of my shadows, my depth map shadows on there, and I'm just going to adjust the shadowing on there so you can see that I'm actually getting some nice kind of shadows falling off as I go, and I can work with those shadows in my UI here. So I'm just going to turn on my texture layers here, and we can take a look at my textures there. You can see that I can go ahead still and kind of adjust my lighting with my shadows as needed. And I'm just going to take a look at a couple other things for presenting our models here. So we're just looking at a simple default material with texture layers assigned and some real-time shadowing on there. We can do a couple other things while we work. We can turn on expert mode, and this will give us full screen toggling on here just with the top menu on there. We could turn that off to hide that UI environment there as well if we wanted to. And I can just use this to kind of maximize my workspace as I work. As well, we'll just take a look down here beside our material presets. We have some camera bookmarks, and we could use this for the presentation of our models here, as well as just for creating some nice images for some screen grab real-time rendering. Actually, while we're on that, let's just jump into our material here and set some HDR lighting on here. So you'll see that in my default material, we have a tab on the bottom here, image-based lighting. I'm actually using an EXR image here. I'm just going to turn on the image-based lighting, and using the same controls I can go ahead and actually just go ahead and actually adjust my lighting in the same way. So you can see that I can manipulate this, I can rotate it around, and just kind of get it into a setting here to give us a little bit better lighting on there. So you can see I'm getting real-time reflections as well as I adjust that HDR light there. So let's just rotate them around here and take a look at what we have. And maybe we'll just move this to get a little more lighting, a little bit more on the side of his face there. So that should do. And then I can jump into some settings here on my default material that I want to, if I want to adjust a couple different settings on here. So maybe we'll take a look at adjusting maybe some of our reflections, some of our specularity on here. So let's see what we have for specularity. That's fine, so we'll leave that at that. And our reflections we have enabled up just a little bit. Maybe we'll just put them up a little bit more so you can see that we're getting our reflections happening on here. And I think what we'll do now is let's just jump into our viewport filters. And our viewport filters enable us to preview our models with our HDR lighting using a variety of different settings here. So I'm going to adjust the tone mapper. And what the tone mapper will do is give me kind of a luminance adjustment on here. So I can just go ahead and start to dial in some settings. I'm going to crank this one right down here because I'm actually going to put the gamma right up high. And I'm going to turn on things like ambient occlusion on here as well. So you'll see with my real-time ambient occlusion that I'm going to turn on here, I can get a couple different effects on here. So let's actually just take a look at this. I'm going to crank that up to its best setting and just increase the strength on that. So you can see that I'm dialing in that ambient occlusion as I go. We'll work with it at about that level there. And I'll just adjust my sample radius here. So I'm adjusting these settings real time just to give me something that, let's see, to my liking there. That'll do. So you can see that's kind of highlighting our features or the cavities in our creature here quite well as well. So I'm going to turn on some depth of field here too. So by turning this on, we can actually get a nice effect here. So I'm just going to kind of dial in some nice kind of settings on here. So let's just get some depth of field in here, and you can see that we kind of have some nice focus in and around his face there. And I can tumble around in real time, and we can preview our creature as we go along in there. So as you can see with our rendering settings that we have in Mudbox 2009, it enables an artist to actually go ahead and preview their model as it would appear in their real-time environment, a games environment, or even for giving a real-time preview of a creature for a rendered environment for film or television, for example.